John Deere, the iconic American manufacturer, announces a $55 million investment in a new facility in Nuevo León, Mexico. This strategic move is designed to strengthen its position in the rapidly expanding Latin American construction market. But the announcement doesn't go down easily with President Trump and his political circle. They react with fury, threatening severe tariffs and sparking a fiery national debate over American manufacturing and globalization. But what exactly is John Deere building in Mexico, and why does this single decision have the power to humiliate President Trump? Sit tight, because we're about to break it all down for you. John Deere's strategic expansion. John Deere's $55 million expansion into Mexico isn't just another international investment. It's designed to seize a major opportunity unfolding just south of the US border. With the Latin American construction sector experiencing explosive growth, John Deere sets its sights on the region as a critical battleground for global market dominance. Mexico, in particular, emerges as a focal point. Its compact equipment market is surging, with a staggering 76% growth reported since 2022. For a company that thrives on precision and timing, the signal is loud and clear: act now or fall behind. The new facility in Nuevo León is the centerpiece of this push. Situated in one of Mexico's most industrialized and logistically connected regions, this plant is anything but ordinary. It's not a relocation of jobs, it's an extension of ambition. Inside, the company plans to produce mini track loaders and mini wheel loaders, machines vital to construction sites, urban development, and even agricultural innovation. These aren't just popular products, they're the very backbone of modern infrastructure projects across Latin America, where cities are growing, economies are modernizing, and the demand for efficient equipment is at an all-time high. What makes this move even more powerful is the proximity advantage it brings. By manufacturing these machines within the region where they're most in demand, John Deere eliminates many of the hurdles that slow down international supply chains. It reduces transportation costs, shrinks lead times, and allows the company to adapt swiftly to shifting needs on the ground. In an age of disrupted global logistics, this kind of localized production isn't just smart, it's a competitive weapon. But there's a broader play at work here. This isn't just about meeting current demand, it's about long-term positioning. By embedding itself into Mexico's economic ecosystem, John Deere is future-proofing its operations against the volatility of US-centric policy shifts, trade disruptions, and rising domestic production costs. It's not abandoning America, it's diversifying its reach and protecting its future. For a company founded in the 1800s and still dominating today, longevity isn't luck, it's strategy. And that strategy is exactly what's causing political shockwaves back in Washington. While John Deere focuses on efficiency, growth, and global access, President Trump sees something entirely different. To him and his political base, the announcement is not just a corporate update, it's a provocation, a challenge to the very narrative of economic nationalism he continues to champion. And that tension is about to explode. But as John Deere lays out its vision for global growth, the temperature in political circles rises to a fever pitch. To many watching from Capitol Hill, this isn't just another business expansion, it's a symbolic fracture, and no one is louder or more uncompromising in their reaction than President Trump. Trump's fiery response. President Trump wastes no time addressing the development. He calls it a slap in the face to American workers and a betrayal of the very principles that have long defined companies like John Deere. With unwavering resolve, he issues a thunderous warning. If John Deere thinks they can move jobs to Mexico and sell back to us, they're wrong. A 200% tariff is coming their way. The statement is bold, unmistakable, and crafted to strike fear into the hearts of any corporation considering a similar move. This is Trump in his most familiar posture, drawing a hard line around American manufacturing. His America First philosophy is rooted in the belief that American companies have a duty to support American workers. In his eyes, companies that benefit from domestic infrastructure, tax incentives, and a loyal consumer base must keep their operations within US borders. And when they don't, punishment must follow. For Trump, John Deere's decision isn't just a strategic relocation, it's a betrayal of trust. It's personal. Deere, after all, is more than a company. It's an emblem of rural America, a name that resonates across farms, fields, and heartland communities that have long formed the backbone of Trump's support base. To see that name tied to foreign soil, stamped with international strategy, is more than disappointing, it's infuriating. The proposed 200% tariff isn't a bluff. It's a direct threat wielded like a sledgehammer to hammer home the point, manufacture abroad, and face consequences at home. This isn't just policy, it's political doctrine rooted in protectionism and economic nationalism. Trump's entire economic message hinges on the idea that American prosperity comes from within, not from outsourced labor or international shortcuts. And he's not just signaling to John Deere. This is a broader declaration aimed at boardrooms across the country. Any CEO weighing cost-saving overseas moves now sees the cost of political backlash. For Trump, this moment is a litmus test of loyalty, of ideology, of corporate patriotism. It's no longer enough to deliver value to shareholders. In his world, companies must also pass the test of national allegiance. Yet, behind the fury lies a growing tension. Trump's rhetoric energizes many who feel left behind by globalization, but for companies navigating an increasingly complex global economy, such rigid boundaries clash with economic reality. Supply chains, labor markets, and regulatory landscapes don't adhere to borders. And when politics disrupts those ecosystems, the consequences can ripple far and wide. This confrontation between John Deere and President Trump doesn't just expose a policy disagreement, it reveals a philosophical war over the future of American industry. It's a showdown between the demands of global competition and the pressures of political loyalty, and the fallout is just beginning to take shape. As President Trump doubles down on his threat of a 200% tariff against John Deere, the economic world immediately begins calculating the cost. Analysts, economists, and industry insiders flood the airwaves and op-eds, dissecting what this kind of protectionist policy might mean not just for one company, but for the entire US economy. And the consensus among many experts? This move has the potential to do more harm than good. Economic implications. On the surface, tariffs may sound like a powerful tool to pressure companies into staying domestic, but in practice, they often ripple through the economy in unpredictable and often damaging ways. By punishing John Deere with massive duties on products manufactured abroad, the cost of those products would inevitably rise. And that cost doesn't stay in the boardroom, it gets passed down. American farmers, construction firms, and small business owners who rely on Deere's equipment would suddenly find themselves facing significantly higher prices. For those running tight margins in already strained sectors, that spike in cost could be a deal breaker. Equipment that was once affordable could now sit out of reach. And when those customers pull back, the impact doesn't just stop at John Deere. It rolls through supply chains, dealerships, repair shops, and even lending institutions that finance large equipment purchases. Then there's the global dimension. International markets are not likely to watch silently as the US levies harsh penalties. Retaliatory tariffs from other nations could follow, putting US-based Deere products at a disadvantage overseas. That not only weakens Deere's position abroad, but also threatens to spark broader trade disputes that entangle multiple industries. Suddenly, a single tariff aimed at one company creates shockwaves that destabilize international commerce. Critics of the proposed tariffs argue that John Deere, like many modern manufacturers, is responding rationally to global market dynamics. Labor costs, logistical efficiencies, and access to emerging markets play a critical role in long-term viability. The world has changed, faster, more interconnected, and more complex. Clinging to a rigid, inward-facing model of manufacturing risks isolating American companies, not protecting them. Supporters of Trump's stance insist that hard lines must be drawn to preserve American jobs and hold corporations accountable, but even some among them admit that the tools used must be strategic, not blunt. A tariff this steep, applied without a nuanced understanding of the global supply chain, risks becoming a political hammer that cracks the very industries it seeks to defend. And while the political rhetoric is fierce, the reality on the ground is even more intense. Business leaders, farmers, and investors are left in a state of uncertainty. Planning becomes harder, costs become unpredictable, and confidence in long-term stability begins to erode. The conversation shifts from policy theory to economic survival. As the debate over tariffs heats up, one thing becomes clear: this is no longer just about John Deere. It's about the future of American economic policy in a globalized world. It's about whether the US will adapt to that world or try to wall itself off from it, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Public and industry reactions. As the news of President Trump's tariff threat spreads, the effect hits the public and industry circles with full force. Across the country, reactions vary wildly, from outrage to cautious support, exposing a deep divide in how Americans view the intersection of politics, economics, and global industry. In the heartland, where John Deere tractors are as common as grain silos, farmers are watching with growing anxiety. For many of them, Deere isn't just a brand, it's a vital tool, a partner in their day-to-day survival. Equipment costs are already high, and the looming threat of a 200% tariff could send prices into the stratosphere. That's not just inconvenient, it's crippling. For small and mid-sized farms running on thin profit margins, even a modest increase in machinery prices could be the difference between staying afloat and going under. The same concern echoes through construction sites from Ohio to Arizona. Contractors and builders rely on mini loaders and compact equipment to meet tight project deadlines and budgets. If prices spike or parts become harder to get, those delays don't just slow down jobs. They increase costs, drive down profits, and sometimes shut down work entirely. For blue-collar workers, this isn't a theoretical policy debate. It's a very real threat to their livelihoods. Yet not everyone is critical. Some voices emerge in support of President Trump's aggressive stance. They argue that companies like John Deere must be held accountable for decisions that impact American jobs. These supporters see the tariff as a necessary evil, a shock to the system meant to force corporations to reconsider offshoring in favor of bringing operations back home. For them, the principle of economic loyalty outweighs the temporary sting of market volatility. But others push back hard. Industry analysts and global trade experts warn that this kind of blunt force approach ignores the realities of a connected economy. They point out that punishing a company for expanding globally may, ironically, result in fewer American jobs, not more. If John Deere loses competitive ground in emerging markets, it could reduce overall output, slashing domestic roles in sales, marketing, logistics, and R&D that support the international footprint. This clash of opinions ignites a national conversation on talk radio, social media, and across editorial columns. Americans debate: should companies be punished for going global? Should economic strategy bend to political ideology? Is protecting domestic jobs more important than competing in international markets? These questions dig deep into the identity of American capitalism. What starts as a corporate expansion and a political counterstrike now transforms into a cultural moment. It's no longer just about tractors, it's about values, vision, and the soul of American industry, and with no clear consensus, the pressure continues to mount on both sides. The bigger picture. Zooming out from the headlines and heated sound bites, John Deere's expansion into Mexico represents more than just one company's business decision. It signals a much broader shift in how multinational corporations operate in the 21st century. In today's hyper-connected economy, the boundaries that once defined domestic and international have become increasingly blurred. For companies like John Deere, optimizing a global manufacturing footprint isn't optional. It's essential for survival. Key factors drive this shift. Labor costs in emerging economies remain significantly lower than those in the United States, allowing manufacturers to maintain price competitiveness without sacrificing product quality. Proximity to booming markets like Latin America, Southeast Asia, and Africa makes overseas facilities strategically invaluable. And in an era where supply chain disruptions are no longer the exception but the rule, placing production hubs closer to the end user is no longer a bonus, it's a necessity. John Deere isn't alone. This is the same path taken by industry giants in automotive, tech, pharmaceuticals, and beyond. It's a calculated response to global realities, diversified production, reduced operational risk, and access to new customer bases. But it also puts companies at odds with the growing wave of economic nationalism, a movement that demands loyalty not just to shareholders, but to the country itself. The friction becomes clear as John Deere's global strategy collides with President Trump's protectionist rhetoric. It's a dramatic clash between the forces of globalization and the pull of patriotic economics. On one side, a company future-proofing itself, adapting to global shifts and pursuing efficiency. On the other, a political movement fueled by the belief that American companies should serve American interests above all else. This situation is no longer just about John Deere or even just about tariffs. It's a microcosm of the larger questions plaguing economies around the world. How do you preserve national identity in an international marketplace? Can you support domestic workers while still competing globally? Where does corporate responsibility end? And where does national duty begin? For lawmakers, this conflict complicates already delicate policy making. They're forced to weigh the short-term political benefits of nationalist policies against the long-term consequences of alienating the private sector. For corporations, the message is equally challenging. How do you innovate and expand without becoming a political target? As John Deere moves forward with its plans in Mexico, the ramifications remain far from settled. Industry insiders watch closely. Political leaders recalibrate their messaging. Other corporations assess their next steps, wary of the precedent being set. Because this isn't just one headline, it's a turning point that could shape the future of American manufacturing for decades to come. Whether the story ends in reconciliation or deeper division, one truth is unavoidable. In today's interconnected world, the decisions of one company can ripple across borders, economies, and ideologies, and John Deere's decision is doing exactly that.